own heart. Over the past 3 weeks, Chris has been giving us a sterling exposition on the intricacies of social media as a tool for business development. On today's edition of MasterClass, Chris will speak on social media strategy. What makes good strategy for social media? And how do you ensure that your strategy is fit for today and for a future that is ever so closer than you think, because change happens at the speed of thought these days. Your comments are welcome, and your questions as well, via our WhatsApp line, which is 0244340437. You can also tweet at us at Joy997FM, hashtag Masterclass. And let's see how we can help you. At some point, we hope to open the phone line so we can interact with you and answer any questions that you may have. But at this point, I think it's worth to say a good afternoon to Chris Wala Esikwe.
Good afternoon.
Welcome. How are you, sir?
Very well, thank you. How have you been?
I've been all right. Trying to stay out of trouble. I know. And just been monitoring and enjoying all the previous 3 episodes. I liked your the way you couch how Twitter had already been around, except that now someone has commoditized it and put it on their platform, and we're now all using it. But yeah, Twitter was invented by women.
Women from Blemazado. In the water.
From Blemazado.
In the water region.
I like that. Yes. All right. So I think that I have to ingratiate myself very quickly. So here's what we're going to do. I know you like reggae.
Yes.
And I know you've been requesting for a particular song. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I got it right, but this song is Harvest Time by Don Carlos.
Okay.
That shed innocent blood of the people. Whoa, oh yeah. Whoa, Jah shall clean out the bad weeds, yeah, and separate them from the good, cause the day of harvest is near. Whoa, 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 Jah shall clean out the bad weeds, yeah, and separate them from the good, cause the day of harvest is near. Whoa, 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 whoa.
Because the day of harvest is near. That's a very classic reggae song from Don Carlos. Very good song. And for you who's just tuned in, you're listening to Masterclass. My name is Inshira Ado. I'm sitting in for Yao Banafo. And we will be hearing from Chris Wala Esikwe on social media strategy, which I'm sure you have a say in, and it won't be separating the good wheat from the bad ones. You have responsibility to ensure that you stand out.
Of course.
Okay.
Of course.
So a quick recap of last week. I know you did Twitter 101
Yes.
last week. It's quite interesting that Twitter has become so fast-paced, and the speed with which a lot happens means that if you're going to use social media and apply any tool, you must have your fingers on the pulse at all times.
Yes, that is what it is. So, I mean, it's interesting how we are going to start today because a lot has happened in the Twitter space or Twitter sphere.
That's right.
Over the past couple of days. And when we started this thing, I had indicated that if trouble strikes you on Twitter, you have only 4 seconds to take control of the narrative. If you don't, you will lose it and it can have dark consequences. So this morning I was reading on somebody's platform on Facebook about how a young lady who got hired for internship with NASA tweeted something using that F word.
Wow.
And somebody who happens to have something to do with NASA tweeted back to the person or replied to the tweet to say, to just say language, like
what's your
raising a red
language?
flag.
Yeah.
And then the original owner of the tweet came back to say something even
Worse than the first one.
Than the first.
Okay.
And then people generated hashtags and started tweeting and retweeting and retweeting.
Mm.
And to cut a long story short, the young lady lost the opportunity to intern with NASA.
Mm-hmm.
No, so even though the one who raised a red flag took responsibility at some point and said, well, it wasn't meant to make a loser job, and so on and so forth, and was taking steps to get her to get another internship and so on and so forth. What has been clear in all of this is that people need to understand that social media may be a fun place, but you should also understand it is a roadside.
And
We
you
need
have
to be
ultimate
responsible.
responsibility for your own actions.
Yes, so that is very important. So yes, just to wrap up on, as a recap on Twitter, we said, get your goals right, understand how that space works. Also need to understand the fact that Twitter is like a busy banquet hall with all kinds of people doing all kinds of things. Take your time to enter the fray wisely, create your voice and hold your space. Be sure not to get it all fussy and get yourself into trouble. You get it right, you'll be fine. If you get it wrong, there is trouble. Twitter is fluid. It is interesting. Twitter can be savage. So people need to understand that.
It certainly can.
Yes.
Thanks very much. Okay, so now let's launch into the social media strategy. As any business would grow, it's important that you have a strategy, a plan. And you can't avoid having a social media strategy in this day and age, because if your business is not on social media, then it probably will die because your competition is there. So set us off on what the right road will be to be able to achieve a good strategy for now and the future.
Okay, so once again, let me say good afternoon to our listeners and people who are watching us on Facebook Live. So today we are going to be covering just 5 quick steps on how to create a solid social media strategy for your business. Remember, play on social media is pretty much like entering a game of war.
Okay.
If you do not strategize properly, you can be in trouble. If you get it right, you will smile. It will affect your bottom line.
That's right.
So there are a couple of quick steps everyone who wishes to get into that space must understand. And I had said this over and over, that for any business that wants to go into social media, the first point of call is to have a social media policy in-house.
Okay.
That should be where you start from, even before you start developing a strategy. A policy is key. It's the roadmap that guides you as to how your employees can engage, where they can do what they cannot do, and if there's trouble, how do they respond, who says what, when do they say it, what are the various measurements of trouble that can happen on social media. So let's go on to what we want to cover today. Today, my listeners will be learning how to align their social media goals with company goals, and how to break goals into specific tactics. 3, to prioritize their plans. 4, assign tasks and set their expected times of arrival. That is an aviation terminology, ETA. That is when you hope the task will be achieved. And then number 5 will be analysis and adaptation of the plan. So let me go through quickly once again. Aligning social media goals with the company goals, breaking goals into specific tactics, prioritizing the plans, assigning tasks and setting ETAs, and finally analyzing and adapting the plan. So how do we get on the road? Number 1, everyone who wants to go into social media as part of doing business should understand that every CEO worth their salt will think normally first in figures before they think in any other terms. So if whatever you want to do on social media does not align with the company's goals, please forget it. Now, what are the company goals? They are the goals that the founders, the executives, or the board members care most about accomplishing. And you need to show how social media can help achieve these goals in a meaningful way. So set your social media goals that align with the overall company goals. Very important. That is step number 1. Let's look at a scenario. Let's create a company here and use it to develop the first point. So my company is Elinyam Ventures. And Elinyam Ventures is into the production of coconut oil and palm oil, the best you can find anywhere in town. So Elinyam Ventures decides that for this year, 2018, they have 2 top goals they want to work with. Goal number 1 is to expand into a new market.
Okay.
Goal number 2 is to ship 3 key products into the existing space.
Okay.
Now, how would they use social media to expand into a new market? The first goal.
That's right.
A number of things they can do. So 1, they can discover and build relationships with influencers in the new market.
Okay.
We'll come back to look at how that can be done. 2, they can partner with influencers to grow their business audience in the new market. Or 3, they can create and promote brand content that drives top of the funnel growth in the new market. Let me look at those once more. So Elinyam Oil has 2 top goals for 2018. 1, to expand into a new market. How do they do that? Discover and build relationships with influencers in the new market.
That's right.
2, partner with influencers to grow audience in the new market. 3, create and promote branded content that drives top of the funnel growth in the new market. So that is for the first goal, to expand into a new market. Now, if they want to ship 3 new products into the existing space, 1, they can run social media campaigns to promote the business launches. Or 2, raise awareness around and drive engagement around the new features of the product they want to import into the space or bring into the space. So we have looked at 2 goals for 2018, and we have looked at how those goals can be achieved. Now, what if the company does not have any top goals for the year? And many businesses start and they are pretty much groping in the dark, wanting to do everything and all kinds of things. So if it is not clear what the top goals for the year are, certainly there will be some marketing efforts in the marketing department.
That's right.
So you can align with those. So for instance, you want to use social media to increase brand awareness, to drive traffic to your website, to generate new ideas, to grow revenue, to boost brand engagement, to build a community, which is very important in social media marketing, building and maintaining a community, increasing press mentions, and also doing what we call social listening. So you can use any of this if the company doesn't seem to have a clear top goal for the year. So we are done with the first step. The first
step being aligning the social media goals to
with
the organizational
overall
goals.
company goals.
Yeah.
When you are done with that, you go to step number 2, which is to break down your goals into specific tactics.
That's right.
So again, we are going to use the same Elinian Ventures analogy to break this down further. So you want to map out the specific actions you need to take to accomplish the goals you have set.
That's right.
We agreed that company wants to expand into a new market. And we said we use social media to discover and build relationships with influencers. Now, how can we break that down into specific tactics that we can take action on? Sorry.
Yeah.
So, social media will help us discover and build relationships. Now, the specific tactics we can use, and they are not in any particular order. You want to create a list of, say, a number of influencers, 100 influencers, or 2, direct message each influencer about potential for partner with them, or 3, set up a sponsored post with one brand or influencer per month. I mean, these are things you just brainstorm with your team. These are I want to do A, B, C, and D in order to be able to discover and build relationships with the influencers. Mind you, at this point, it is not clear which of the tactics is more important than the other. You don't know you have not decided yet whether to create a list of 100 influencers is more important than direct messaging them or setting up a sponsored brand post for every month.
Right.
So how do you determine which one should be more important than the other? How do you prioritize? That becomes your third step.
That's right. Well, you now have to take... So you started with what you want to achieve at the top.
At the top.
You've now broken it down into specifics.
Tactics.
Exactly. And then now you decide that these tactics has to be prioritized.
Yes.
What goes first?
What comes next?
Okay.
Very well so. So here we're going to do some mathematics. So everyone who remembers the X and Y axis, and for those who think social media is fun and there's no mathematics, please rethink your position today.
Okay.
And those who have been running away from mathematics and so they go to do communication studies.
You meet it somewhere along the line.
At some point, it is an integral part of your business. So how do you choose which of the tactics to prioritize? So on the X and Y axis, so we are going to do the quadratic equation now. You do what we call the value versus complexity graph.
Okay.
You are going to plot your tactics on a graph X, Y. The Y-axis will be the business value, will determine the business value.
Okay.
And the X-axis will be the complexity of the task involved.
Okay.
Now, in that one quadrant, you break that space into 4. So let me try to give a pictorial presentation of what I'm saying. On the XY axis, there are 4 quadrants. So the top right hand, the bottom right hand, the left bottom, and then the upper left. So, yes, that is it.
Okay.
So, in the top right quadrant, draw a cross. So, again, in that space, you're going to have 4 quadrants in that one quadrant. So, in the first quadrant, put number 1. In the second quadrant, which is adjacent to it on the top, number 2. Then the bottom 2, you can put 3 and 4 if you like, or just put a question mark or anything.
Okay.
Now, once you get it, let's try to explain.
Okay, so this is what you're supposed to get.
Exactly what.
Okay, so for the benefit of anyone listening who may not grasp this very quickly, all you need to start off with is to draw a big L.
Yes, a big L.
Yes,
Very well.
where your vertical is your Y-axis and the horizontal is your X. And then you draw a plus to create the 4 quadrants, and you number them from left to right. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you have
very
it.
easy. You should be a good teacher.
I beg you. This one, I'm inspired by the reggae.
Thank you very much.
Right.
So, in the first quadrant, you would notice where you put number 1. number one will be the tactics that brings the highest business value
at the least complexity.
at the least complexity. The least complexity here means the effort you need to invest in getting that done, which effort could include financial resources, technical know-how, etc., will be least, yet you are going to derive
get
high
higher
value.
So, if, for example, that the product that you want to throw into the town requires, well, your best approach might be that you do an endorsement by an influencer.
Very well.
Which may not cost you money. You don't need the technical know-how. All you need is to have a good relationship, and this person will do this for you. So,
if you can leverage your social capital, that is excellent.
And so that will sit
up there.
Up there. So low complexity, high value.
Business value. That becomes your number one. So you go back to the three things you said you're going to do. You said you want to create a list of 100 influencers.
Yeah.
You want to do a direct messaging. You want to do a sponsored post. Which of them would you need the least effort to accomplish? Which of them is the least requires least of least complexity, yet to bring you the highest value? So that becomes your number one priority. Then you go to the second space, number two. Here, the business value is high, but the effort is equally high. It means you would have to put in a lot of resources. It's very complex. You need to put in so much to be able to get the value. Then in the third place, the business value will be low, even though it also requires low effort. I mean, very little effort to accomplish.
Yeah.
The business value will be low. Then the very last one, this one, the business value, sorry, let me take the number three again. The business value will be high, but the complexity will be low.
Okay.
Then in the last one, business value is low,
complexity
but the effort is high. It means you're going to put in a lot of money, a lot of resources, yet what it will bring to the business will not be as big.
And so that's not an ideal space to be in.
That shouldn't even be a part of it. So when you are putting together your tactics, feel free to brainstorm and put as many tactics in place as possible. But when you come to choosing which one of them to put on the highest pedestal, this is how you do it.
Okay.
Put it on the value versus complexity graph, and then you determine which ones to go with first and which one not to go in with. I mean, there are some things you do that bring no results to the business. Some will eventually bring results, but what you put in to eventually get the results would wipe away all the good it would have generated.
Okay.
So be careful about that. So to sum that up, we are simply saying the social media tactics that fall into section 1 of the model, that is high value, low complexity, will be your top priority.
Yeah.
The tactics that fall into the second section, that is high value, high complexity, will be the next on the list. And then the rest, you can decide to literally
leave them alone.
Throw them out, yes. So that is about number 3, or step number 3.
That's right. That's the prioritization of the plan.
So
okay.
Just to recap, the first one we said
aligning personal social media goals to organizational goals.
Yes.
So social media goals to organizational goals. And then breaking down the goals into tactics.
Yes.
And then now prioritizing those plans using the value versus complexity graph.
Exactly.
Okay. And the third one is now assigning tasks.
The fourth one.
Yeah, sorry, the fourth is assigning tasks.
And to set the expected times of accomplishment.
Okay, yeah.
So if you do not know where you are going, you won't be able to tell if you have gotten to the place. That is critical. So decide this is where you want to go, and when you get there, you'll be able to know. You should be able to monitor and evaluate your activities. Now, who does what? You want to expand into a new market, and you agree that you are going to use influencers to do that. And you have broken your task down into creating a list or direct messaging or setting up a sponsored ad. Now let's come back to creating a list. who would do what and at what point.
Okay.
That should be clear to everybody. So this task will be accomplished by, say, 1st of September, and it should be handled by Mr. A or Madam B. So everybody knows that this is what is expected of them in the team.
Mm-hmm.
Do the same for the remaining tasks you want to accomplish. Once you get this done, you are able to monitor. If you are getting there or not, you should be able to tell.
Okay.
It should be as simple as that for number 4. Last step. So today we are going to have a lot of time for our listeners to
interact with
to
us.
interact with us.
Wonderful.
Last step is to analyze and adapt the plan as you go. The thing about social media is that it is so fluid, you cannot always have your fingers on the tab all the time. I mean, you should, ideally you should. But you shouldn't be rigid about it. Things happen when you least expect them.
Mm-hmm.
I cited this example before and I'm going to use it again. I am not sure that at any point in the planning of Midland services, they had envisaged that there will be trouble of that magnitude in this around this time of the year. They probably would have put in place very nice strategy to go through the year. They could anticipate trouble at some point, but not in the magnitude we saw it. Let me also use the other example of Calipo in the 2016 elections. They plotted nicely for the year. We are going to sell so much. We are going to do ABC, our demand and supply charts. They got everything figured out. And then out of nowhere,
Calipo
one of the
became-
presidential candidates used Calipo, and one party, in an attempt to play on it, made it a big issue. And then Calipo has become the most sought after commodity in town. If you had a sweet social media strategy in place, you say, May, I'm going to do this. June, I'm going to do this. And so on and so forth. And then in July, something happens that you did not plan for. What do?
Go back to the drawing board quickly.
Or you choose not to do anything and stiff-neckedly follow the plan you want to do for the year.
What's the potential upside or downside to sticking with your plan as compared to altering it in light of new developments?
So, in light of new development, if it's a positive development, if you do not alter, you lose out on the gains you should make in the interim. So, like in the case of Calipo, that was a positive development for them.
Okay.
So, if they changed their communication, their marketing communication for that period, and hemmed in a lot more people to use Calipo, they would cash in on that windfall. Now, again, if it's a negative thing for the brand, you cannot stick to your ground and say, this is how we want to go. We want to be very prim and proper about it. We want to be official about it. And so we cannot bend. I mean, social media is no respecter of brands or persons. So when it happens, take advantage of the situation. If it is positive, gain from it. If it is negative, you still need to work in that space, leverage it, and get your brand out of the mess. Otherwise, people will speak for you. Competition will cash in on it. When the banks issue happened, I keep listening to one of the new bank ads, and each time I hear it, I smile, and I think it's a shit they are throwing at the banks that are in trouble. Yes, I listen and I just smile. So competition will take advantage of the space, and they will say things for you. What should you do? You should also be in that space and play well. So make adjustments and adapt your goals and tactics as you go. If something doesn't feel right, you can always change it to something that works better. Like one Kivan Lee, who is the marketing director of Buffer, has said, and let me quote him. He says, I like to think of this plan like a road trip. Start out by pointing yourself in the right direction, then choose the way you are going to get there, check in regularly to make sure you are on track, and have fun along the way.
That's pretty good. Head in the right direction.
Check
It's as though to say, go with the flow, but be wide awake as you do so.
Don't close your eyes for too long.
Absolutely.
If you take your eyes off the pedal, things can go south.
Okay.
And when they do, you'll be in big trouble.
Okay, sorry about that. Let me just take this moment to invite our audience to join us. By WhatsApp, you can send your WhatsApp to 0244 340 437, and you can also call us on 0302 216 541.
So, by way of conclusion, we say begin by aligning your social media goals with top level company goals. Let top management understand why they need to invest in the social media space. If they cannot put a figure to what you want to do, chances are that you won't get a figure to support you. So I'm playing on words here. If they cannot put figures to what you want to do, they will not put figures behind it.
Absolutely.
Very important.
Absolutely.
So align with them. Let them see how social media can be used to, for instance, create a new business line for the existing business. 2, break each goal down into specific tactics. 3, prioritize your plan. 4, assign tasks. And 5, analysis, and adaptation as you go.
Right. So just to recap my own understanding here, so that for those of you who may have missed out, it's important that when you start, you align your social media goals to the organization's top goals. The example that I was giving was, okay, so if you have a product, you want to sell a certain quantity over a period or break into a new market, then you now move to step 2, which is you break down these goals into tactics, and then you decide how now you will execute this plan. The third thing would be that you prioritize all these plans into specifics, and then you assign tasks as number 4, and also expected time of achievement, so that you're not just running around, but that you have put some finite time to this role. And also, the final thing is finalizing, activating, and adapting as you go along. Well, Chris, it's been fantastic, but I have a few questions. Now,
Sure.
A lot of things are happening nowadays that the key thing you said in that analogy of or the example of using the value and complexity graph is that if, say, you're entering a space and you need to do branded content, there's this concept about content. Could in cases, could the cost or the complexity be something that you only figure out after? So, for example, if you did branded content and you're entering into a new market, could that content maybe be deemed as unsuitable for people? How do you redress your strategy?
That is fine. So the approach we all know is to think globally, but to act locally. So your global strategy is to sell a particular product in a certain market, and by convention, your brands use red colors. I mean, your brand color is red.
That's right.
And you are going to a market where green is their preferred color. If you are going to play in that space and caught the affection of the people, you must look at your strategy and localize it. If you to mean changing the colors to suit that space, you should. Now, don't wait till you go into the space and realize the product is not accepted because of the branded content.
Okay.
So, as part of your planning, as part of the tactics you'll be using, think through what the local situation is and be ready to adjust to suit the situation on the ground. Now, branded content could come as part of the cost or the complexity or the effort required to decide which of the tactics should be your number one priority or which shouldn't be. So the cost involved in branding a particular content should be part of what you consider when you're prioritizing.
Now, there's a lot of development around us. artificial intelligence, for example, and the smart speakers like Alexa and Google. That Google's Alexa, and then I think the Siri and Apple's own version. The Google Home and Alexa. These are speakers that essentially provide you with information. They're connected to the World Wide Web in this age of Internet of Things. If we're coming up with a social media strategy, how should the things happening around us influence where we go with our ideas and our thinking?
Okay. So first off, when you do your social media strategy, remember to think ahead. Look at things happening around you and let them inform how you plan. Before long, so many businesses are going to be thrown out of business if they continue in the way they are now. My first day here, I told a story of how in the early parts of the millennium, at the turn of the millennium, we all started identifying with the Web 1.20 and how those days all you needed to do to remain relevant was to go stand at busy internet car park to create the impression that you knew what's up with internet. Those were the days of cyber cafes. Yeah, you were going to the cafe. I recall one gentleman met me at one internet cafe at Denu Junction those days. He looked at me and asked, "Have you come to the internet?" And I laughed. Things have changed drastically between then and now. Those were the days when you needed to meet people. You met them at Obrasport in Accra.
Yeah.
And the internet came. And things started happening. Well, that is not to say internet came after 2000. It's been here for a while. What has not changed, however, is the conversations we have had.
Right.
Our meeting spaces would have changed. Our physical, geographical spaces would have changed. We are now meeting virtual spaces. But the conversations have literally remained the same. I am on a WhatsApp platform with mates from my high school days. We're in the same dorm. So we call the platform the Boys Dorm. So shout out to the Boys Dorm guys. We pretty much discuss things that we used to discuss in the dorm those days. Even though we are not in the same geographical space now.
That's right.
We are all over the world. Now, if you understand that your social media strategy is going to affect people who now live 75% of their lives online, then you are not going to be staying in that space and say, this is how we do it. We cannot change it. 80% of our high schoolers are using smartphones. If they wake up in the morning, the first thing they do is to check their Instagram pages, to check their WhatsApp pages and see what is happening there. Of that number, of the 80%, each one of them is on at least one social media platform. Yeah. What that means is that there's a huge potential market 5 years from now. So if you are plotting your strategy today, you are taking account of the fact that things are changing at the speed of lightning. If you are a school, for instance, you run training programs. And let me use the opportunity to say there'll be some training program coming up very soon in conjunction with some partners. We'll be putting up some training programs for people who want to take part in.
And so for social media.
For social media.
No,
so the people should check my Facebook page with time. I'll put those out there. Now, if you're a training institution and you know that now organizations are interested in social media, please, you have done enough training in accounting, you have done enough training in the back of the cover marketing. We all know how to do the kind of sales we have done all the years. This is time to restructure your curriculum to meet the expectations of the generations around us now. I mean, things are going to change drastically, and so be informed that you cannot continue the way you are doing today and hope to make to make the bottom line look good.
Fantastic. Now, the other thing that I think we ought to consider, how can we ensure that in our strategy, and you mentioned that recently, businesses have had to quickly rise up and face negative, light on their brands. How do you ensure that in building your social media strategy, you do have an appreciable level of management, reputation management for the brand built into the social media strategy?
Okay. So begin by getting the buy-in of everybody in management, number
Okay.
one. Get the buy-in of everybody who is associated with the brand in one way or the other. Begin with your employees. Let them understand where you are going. Now, we encourage brands, companies, especially if you have a business that employs at least 10 people. We encourage you to have in place a social media policy and train your staff on same.
Okay.
Before evil days come. Now, once they understand where they can play in, what they can do and what they cannot do, you are one step ahead of the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So when the challenge does happen, it is easier to manage. There have been instances where organizations in this country have looked on and their names have been dragged in the mud before they started fighting the fire. In the social media age, if you don't take control of the conversation early, you can lose. And the thing is, because we thrive a lot on reputation, perception, and oftentimes perceptions have become our realities. People need to get the buy-in of everybody around the brand to begin with. Number 2, training. Training is key. 3, businesses are going to suffer one form of challenge or the other on social media.
Right.
I've said it again and again that the only businesses that will not suffer any social media failure are the ones that are not on social media. But even they somehow will find their names dragged in the social media mud.
So you must be ready.
You should be ready at any point. Do regular watch. I mean, you should do what we call social listening. Be there all the time to see what is being said, to hear what is being said about your brand.
Okay.
Set up systems to check, and that you can be helped with. If you need professional help with that, we can help you with that.
Okay.
Set up systems that helps you to to quickly detect what is being said about your brand. Be there with the people who are mentioning or having conversations around your brand. If you are not there and they are saying positive things about you, to God be the glory. But if they are saying negative things about you,
you have to have a way.
I mean,
so that's where social listening comes.
That is where you need social listening. That is why you need to be there.
Explain just in 20 seconds. Break down the concept of social listening.
So you wake up one morning and go Google your name. Type your name into Google and see the various stories that come out about you. I was stunned in graduate school when I was preparing to go do an internship with one very big organization, and we were supposed to do online telephone interview. And the interviewer asked a question about a demonstration I had led way back in 2002. I was shocked. I actually said no, that wasn't true. And then they referred me to a link. I Googled and I found out that indeed there was something we had done as students way back, and one of the media houses captured it and put it online. So when they were preparing to interview me, they had gone online to pick up that material.
Wow.
And I had to answer questions for it. So if you just wake up one morning, Google yourself, Google your name, and see the kind of stories that are being, things that are written about your brand. You can set up Google Alerts, and it will make it easy for you. So if you type the name of your company, or if you create a hashtag about your business, keep referring to them from time to time, and you hear all the conversation. You see the things people are saying about you. Some would demand or request that you respond immediately. Others would even mean that you take the conversation offline and go talk to the people behind the scenes and get them to understand, and so on and so forth. So the whole idea of social listening is that you set up alerts on the various social media platforms, even those you are not on.
Yeah.
So that you can hear the conversation that is being.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Chris Walla Esikwe, marketing communications consultant, social media strategist. Thank you for talking to us on MasterClass today. And for you, our audience, we're grateful for your time as always. And my name is Inshirahado. I've been sitting in for Yao Banafo. And Arba Kumsing is up next with the news at 2. In the moment, But I leave you with this song by Shakadimos and Pliers, and they call it Spirit.
All people, I want to know, sir, love.